Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you are very welcome to this beautiful air-conditioned space. I'm Kate Mosse. I'm a novelist and a playwright, and have the great honour to be the pre-show interviewer. However, tonight is a very special night because we are in the presence of Broadway royalty, and I think we need a round of applause for that before we even start. Yes, thank you very much. So with the amazing Susan Stroman. Now, I'm not going to read all of your awards and all of the things you've done, although they will come up. But the fact that you have 5 Tonys and 2 Oliviers, you're one of the very few people to win for choreography and direction in the same year, have broken many, many records. And now here you are in Chichester, and you are very, very welcome.
Thank you so much.
So, Crazy for You. You were part of the original creative team,
yes,
way back in, in the early 90s, 92 and 93. Could you tell us a little bit about how the piece came together? Because it's not quite what it seems. It's not a 30s Gershwin musical written in the 30s.
Right. Well, yes, Crazy for You, I don't know how many of you have seen it already, but it's different from most musicals of that time. And what it is it's a new book by Ken Ludwig, but it has pulled numbers of Gershwin songs that the estate allowed us to use, all of Gershwin's material. And we used material that would push the plot forward and such, and make it about an Easterner who goes west, and of course falls in love. But I was called by the director, Mike Ockrent, as a choreographer. He was looking for a choreographer. But it originally started with a producer named Roger Horchow. I don't know if you've heard of the Horchow catalogs. They were very popular in America. But he created that. But when he was a small child, Gershwin came to his house. And when he was about 7 years old, he heard piano music, and he went down the steps, and George Gershwin was at his parents' piano. And for his whole life, he thought, someday, if I ever make it, I'm going to produce a Gershwin musical. So he was the one that came to New York and found a director and found a playwright, Ken Ludwig, and wanted to now make a Gershwin musical. And they now tried to find a choreographer because it was going to have quite a bit of choreography in it. It's very difficult to hire a choreographer because you don't know if they'll be right for your show. I was very lucky that at that particular time, I had created an off-Broadway show called And the World Goes Round, which had a lot of comedy in it. And then I had Liza Minnelli at Radio City Music Hall, which was a big extravaganza. So they got to see the comedy of And the World Goes Round. They got to see the extravaganza of Liza. And they thought, well, she'll be right for Crazy for You. So when I met with them, it went very well because Mike Ockrent was very funny, Ken was very funny, and Roger Horchow was very funny. And we all got along very well and started to see what this would be like to create this musical. And all of it, it's one of those things where the collaboration was very strong with everybody involved. The original set designer, Robin Wagner, Paul Giamatti, the musical director, all of us were, got on very, very well. So it was a joy to create it. And the thing is, when you're creating a show, you just don't know how it's going to end up. You're just involved in it so deeply, the art of it with the actors and the design and such. You don't really know till you come up for air. And we played out of town in Washington, D.C., and when we came up for air, the audience really loved it. So we knew we had something right.
But there's all of you who've been following the season here at CFT will know Ken Ludwig because he wrote the book for the Murder on the Orient Express that many of you might have seen. It's the same man. But you've made it sound beautiful and straightforward. But actually, when you were on that train to Washington,
yes.
There was suddenly a moment when it was like the second act doesn't work.
No. Well, it was like out of an old black and white movie. We did the final run through in New York, and Mike Ockrent, the director, said, when everybody said goodbye, see you in Washington, D.C., the actors left. And then Mike got us all in the corner, said the second act doesn't work. We're in big trouble, doesn't work. And so the next day, on the Amtrak train from New York to Washington, D.C., Mike Ockrent and Ken Ludwig and Paul Giamatti and myself were on the train, and rewrote the second act of Crazy Few. Of course, Ken was typing madly, but we had to pull music, we had to throw out costumes, and when we got down there, to tell the cast that I've got to take them in the basement to do a big production number that wasn't in the show before. There's a number called The Stiff Upper Lip that wasn't in the show, and now it's in the show. But we threw out a big number called By Strauss and had big, beautiful costumes. But in fact, it was about the storytelling, and you always have to push the plot forward. It always has to be about the story. That's the most important thing. In everyone's department, the design department, choreography, book, direction, it is all about the storytelling. So, by throwing out that second act on the Amtrak train, I think we saved Crazy Few. So, but it taught a lesson to me that director Mike Ockrent being so brave. A lot of directors would not have been that brave.
That late, I mean, with everything.
A lot would not have been that brave, but.
Because you did, in a way, start a trend. I mean, the phrase later became used, the idea of a jukebox musical, the idea that you take songs from here, there, and thither, and it's very successful. Yeah. But in a way, this was the pioneer of that. It showed it could work, didn't it?
It did show it could work.
Yeah. So there you are, back in '92, and it's a hit, and then it comes to London, and it's a hit, and many awards and all of these things. So, and you have been with it in other places as well, in Canada and other places. So what does it feel like now, coming back as the director? How much of your original choreography is there? Have you changed things because the passage of time has made you look at things differently? Just tell us how you're feeling, I suppose, really.
Well, this is the 30th anniversary, so it's very special. And when the wonderful Daniel Evans called in the middle of the pandemic to say, do you want to come to Chichester? I jumped at it, the idea of bringing Crazy Few here to Chichester. It's great combination, because I have to say, in New York City, we hear about Chichester as a magical place, as a beautiful place. Magical, but we're
we love you.
but it's true. It's true. This very, very special place to do theater, to do art, to start new shows, to bring back old shows, to rework shows. So I jumped at it first because Chichester was a magical place. I wanted to be in a magical place, and but also the idea of going back to Crazy Few. Ken has tweaked the book and tightened it and brought it more up to date, if you will, and still, of course, takes place in the 30s, but more for a more contemporary audience. And choreographically, there's a lot from the very original. Most of it is the original. But the thing is, this show has been made for these particular actors. So even though I've done Crazy Few and the choreography is the same, you are inspired by the actors in front of you. If I'm lucky enough when I do a show at Broadway to get a national tour, I change that too for the actor if I see that that's something else would be better for that actor. So this is their show, and this is their Crazy Few. But it is based on the original, and the most of the choreography is original, because the folks that we have in the show can do it all. They all sing and they all dance, and they're all very funny. They're all great actors, really wonderful actors. And so I've been able to do the Crazy Few I wanted to do, but now I think it's even greater because it's been inspired by this particular group of actors.
Yes, and of course for the Chichester audience, many remember seeing Charlie Stemp in Half a Sixpence when he was just starting out.
Yes.
So there is a sense of proprietorial pride, I think, about that. Yeah. But the level required of the dancing for all of them, but particularly the two leads, is extraordinary. So in terms of rehearsing, how long did you have to put the show together? Because it's very complicated, although it looks seamless most of the time. So tell us about the rehearsal process, how long you do it, and how you break it up. What's different about doing a musical from just doing a straight play?
It's very different at doing a musical. I mean, it's a miracle a musical gets up, I have to say. Everybody has to be on it. All the departments have to be on the same page at all time. For this particular production, we rehearsed in London for 5 weeks, and then came here for tech for a week. And so all in all, probably be 7 weeks to get the show up. But the show is very, it's so detailed, and you'll see when you see it, it's very, very detailed, that mining, it takes place in an abandoned mining town in Dead Rock, Nevada. So
we have laid on the weather for that,
yes,
actually, for you.
I know, it does feel like we are in Dead Rock, Nevada. I know. But, so there are mining pans and pickaxes that go flying through the air, and that all has to be caught on particular beats, and, so no one gets hurt. But there are moments, very exciting moments in the show that if it's not well oiled or well choreographed, someone could go down, Yeah. So, we have a wonderful acrobat that someone was in the way and he went flipping and he flipped right into the bomb.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know, he's okay. But that moment of everybody being in the right place, but looking natural that they're in the right place, motivating that they're in the right place. And that's something to say to the actors, that I need you to go over here at this point, but then they have to motivate why they go over there. We have to make sure every moment is motivated to make it natural.
We can't spoil things for those of you who have not yet seen it, but there are some absolutely incredible moments of choreography and movement.
Thank you.
Where, I went home and I just bored my husband and he said, I'm seeing it on Tuesday. Oh, God, so sorry. But those kind of things, in terms of adding them in, I can't mention any of them in particular, but there are certain things that are not normally instruments, shall we say, or certain places where the tap is happening, which you wouldn't normally be tapping there. Do you have a vision for each number? And then you think, what it needs is that? Or is it all there just from the get-go?
When I'm creating any show, I do a lot of research. And I even went to a mining town in Nevada and took pictures of an abandoned mine and took what is there, mining pans, pickaxes, and such, and worked with the set designer about what could be on the set, what could be used. But when I create a number, it is based on the decade that I'm in. For this show, be the 30s, and the geographical area. Dead Rock, Nevada, New York City. People dance very differently in New York City than they do in Dead Rock, Nevada. So trying to add that in. You'll see the girls in New York City hit particular poses, not unlike our Art Deco there girl, you'll see, that are poses that are actually in the architecture of New York City. And it just makes it sort of a rich way to infuse the choreography to make it more real, to make it in that place. And so then we get to Dead Rock, and they move a little slow in Dead Rock, Nevada, because it's hot, like it's here in Chichester, moving slow. So the New Yorkers come to Dead Rock, and our particular leading man, Charlie Stemp, Bobby Child, he comes, and he comes there to foreclose on a bank, on a theater, and then he realizes that if he could bring this theater back to life, he could bring the town back to life. And that's a big part of Crazy Few too, because I know all over America during the pandemic, a lot of towns died because the culture died, because the theater died or the museum died. And so the idea that once you lose the art of the town, you're going to lose the town. So he goes there and sees that if he could bring this theater back to life, he could bring this town back to life. And so it's his want. He doesn't really want to be a banker like his mother wants him to be. He wants to sing and dance and entertain. So he brings this theater back to life.
I must admit, I found that very moving, the echo that you have in Act 1 and Act 2 of the same men in Dead Rock who are now dressed differently and moving differently. Yeah. But the echo was very clear there, the idea that this is restoration, yes. that has happened, and there are many moving, it is romantic comedy, it's very funny, there are farcical elements, people are brilliant at falling over, which I've always been a sucker for. But it's also moving, because it's the idea of following your dreams and that yes. love will conquer everything and you can yes. change yourself.
Yes, and it's about giving up something for someone you love. It's not good enough to just be in love, but to give everything up for that person. So the show is not only about restoration, it is romantic, and it is about falling in love really deeply and choosing it and not running away from it.
Because when I'm going to interview somebody, I always try to do nothing until I've seen the show, and then I go and do the research. And so I came in not knowing that it was an amalgamation of songs from different previous shows, and it was a new show. So I loved the cheeky references to other musicals and all of those things, and I was confused by that. I thought, my God, that's so prescient, sort of. But also, one of the things that I hadn't realised, but then was watching, was the very clever way of different dance forms. So was that your original choreography, saying, I would like some jazz dance here, I would like some American blues here, I would like some, was that part of the original design, that you would showcase everything, really?
Well, the 1930s is rich with styles. It's the best time to dance in because it's rich with swing dancing, with tap dancing, foreshadowing of jitterbug or jive, and from the 20s. It's all comes in the 30s. And also people dance together in the 30s, like Fred and Ginger, And once the twist was invented, no one danced together anymore. Yeah. So it's great to see people dance together. And I'm sure if you asked any of the cast members, they do find it difficult, to find that kind of rubber band action you need with someone when you dance together with them. It's not taught any longer. So it was something for them to conquer, and they've done it beautifully. But it is, I think, too, for a contemporary audience to now see that and see people dance together, I think they're quite taken by that. Because there's nothing better than falling in love when you're in someone's arms dancing. That's when you fall in love, when you dance in someone's arms.
I know, it's one of the reasons, of course, it's so wonderful you're here, but Chichester, particularly in recent years, has a reputation for big, beautiful, proper musicals in that way. And very much in your show, the tap. Oh, the tap. It's just amazing. But were you worried before you started to work that you might not find dancers here that could do all of that? Because it's not, as you say, a lot of these things aren't taught in quite the same way.
No, they're not. But I've been very lucky to have some shows play in London. So I shows like The Producers or Oklahoma and Showboat and Scottsboro Boys, where people did have to tap. So I knew that it is being taught. But I feel like this cast really learned more than usual, and they've stepped up, and they seem to be enjoying it. But tapping isn't taught as much anymore. So it is.
It's just the best sound.
It is the best sound.
And this huge stage as well. It's just made for it, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
In terms of when you were putting the show together, before you met your cast, before you were starting in London, were there any things that you felt before that you wanted to change, and when you came back to it you thought, actually, what it works? Did you have any niggles, like most of us do when we write something or publish something? There's always, for me, it's always chapter 7. There's always something about chapter 7 that's not quite right, and I go, if I ever rewrite that book, I'm going to sort it out.
Well, sure. I mean, I know that 30 years ago there were a lot. Some of the jokes were on the edge of burlesque-ish, and we don't want to do those anymore. And so Ken got rid of all of those, and but that was a goal when we got together, to make it more palatable for a contemporary audience. So those were the things we wanted to really attack, and also, when I create any musical, part of the arrangement is very much what I do. So Gershwin writes 32 bars of I Got Rhythm. Now I have to open that up to an 8-minute dance number. So what I do is work with an arranger, I work with a pianist, and I say I want pan dancing here, or I want someone swinging a pickaxe or whatever. So the music matches the choreography. So when you see the show, if a dancer leaps in the air, so does the orchestra. If you say Bobby and Polly do a floor spin, the orchestra is doing a floor spin. The choreography is supported by the orchestra, but it has been written according to the choreography. And at every show I do that, but for Crazy Few, that's very much of how it all came to be. How we, at one point in Slap That Bass, the girls pull rope off of a rope spool, So I wanted that to run, and I wondered, what if we did that in a jazz waltz, and we changed the melody to a jazz waltz, and we do it. So all the music matches the staging. And so, therefore, coming here, I knew that I had new actors. I had Charlie Stemp, and I said, I want to bring an arranger here with me who will now support anything that Charlie does. It'll be supported by the music and the orchestra. So working with Charlie on the dance, if Charlie jumps in the air, the orchestra jumps in the air.
Yeah.
But that's part of what I do too in creating a piece is arrange the music for it.
So it's absolutely crazy for you, but at the same time, each new production is unique because it's centered around those
well,
things.
at least I'm sure when it's done across the world, the way it was done on Broadway, they adapt at what they can. But when you have the opportunity to make it now for this group, yeah.
So, I mean, you have worked all over the world, obviously huge hits in London, huge hits in Broadway. You have shows running in Broadway. You will have many more shows everywhere. But you've been very lovely about Chai, as we call it, and this stage. How different is it when you have this amazing open thrust stage for a big piece? Does that give you many benefits, or is sometimes the lack of the proscenium quite hard?
No, this was different for me because of the comedy is much more difficult in a thrust stage. Every time you're trying to do comedy, there's someone sitting behind you over there. Oh, so it's trying to create the show now, but to bring in the audience all around. And it is tricky with comedy because sometimes comedy only works straight ahead. A lot of times that's true. But we, looked at each number and figured out how it could take in the entire house.
Yes, and I noticed actually there were different bits were being played to different sections, and people appreciated it. You could really see that. Yeah. Now, you've mentioned the complication of it, and of course, most of the time we just sit there in awe and enjoyment. We're not noticing things going wrong. But there have been one or two things, haven't there?
Yeah. Well, yes, we actually been doing very well. But then Saturday matinee, which you said, oh, I saw it on Saturday matinee. I was like, we did have a couple things, and we're laughing about it today. But just things do go wrong. But I've told the company if anything falls off the stage or out of somebody's pocket or off their costume, they have to pick it up right away because someone could slip on it, it could stop the truck from coming in, it could stop anything. So just as part of your character, you pick it up and you get it off stage, you pick it up, put it in your pocket. Well, that Art Deco girl popped out of that.
I mean, she dived onto the stage.
Like that. And of course, I was in the back and slipped under the chair. I was like, oh no, But one of our wonderful actors, it was in the opening number where he plays a stagehand, he just went and picked it up, dragged it off like he was a stagehand, and moved, cleaning up the stage. I mean, it was fantastic, but it was like the ultimate cleanup of me telling them to pick something up off the stage. But yeah, and so there were a couple of moments that happened, but we got through it, and the audience still seemed happy by the end.
We loved it. I mean, I think the thing is, I'm sure everybody agrees that, particularly in a show like this, which is so joyous, and it's a comedy, I think audiences like being there with those moments because you like seeing them solved apart from anything else.
Well, that's live theater too. That's the breath of an actor, the breath of a dancer. I mean, there's nothing like live theater. That's the breath, and it changes. It's done for you as an audience, just for you. And the next night it'll be done for that audience, and it won't be the same. Yeah. But that's what makes theater so magic. That's what we missed for 2 years, during the pandemic, live theater. It was very difficult for us. London is back, and we're still struggling a bit in New York. We're just coming back.
And people are still masked.
Still, people wear masks in the theater and get tested 3 times a week, and so we're still doing all that. Whether that might stop soon, but it was hard for New York to come back. Yeah.
And this is a very waffly question, but this is the 30th anniversary. You were part of the original team. You answered that call to Daniel Evans, and you're here. Has it felt like you'd imagined it would feel going back to it?
Actually, it was quite emotional going back to it. I probably shouldn't talk about it too much because I might start crying. But when I heard the orchestrations, they're incredible orchestrations. We had a 17-piece band conducted by Alan Williams, and they just sound like they're 30. We had a wonderful, Doug Besterman did the orchestrations, who's sort of the best in New York. And he makes it sound like there's 30 people back there. And just hearing the orchestrations, because I can think back to how something was created 30 years ago. And immediately when I heard the music with the band, I could imagine how that idea came to me or to Mike, or, you know, how it all happened. So it was very emotional.
Yeah, and
very,
thinking
very.
of yourself then and the person you are now and all of the things.
Yes, yeah.
You know, but I mean, the thing I would say, and I think I would speak on behalf of the whole Chichester audience here, it's wonderful that the orchestra doesn't overwhelm the singers. So you say it sounds like 30, but actually what was joyous is that it's beautiful. You can hear the orchestration, but you can hear them.
Yes, we have an incredible sound designer, Kai Harada, and that was a big part of making sure you can hear the singers at all times.
Yeah. And we appreciate that too.
Yeah.
You are extraordinary. The list of the things that you've done is extraordinary. I know you've got a show running on Broadway. You're going to go and check back in on that. But what next? You seem to be just as passionate about everything as I imagine you ever were. So what's your next project, if you can tell us?
Well, during the pandemic, you know, we couldn't go out. And really in New York, I was locked in my apartment for 70 days. You just couldn't go out. I was lucky I was in an elevator building, so groceries would magically come up on the elevator, and magically the door would open. There'd be groceries there. But it was really rough. But I wanted to keep creating and didn't quite know how. But I had to create, you know, to stop me from going into a studio or something was devastating. And so I have a couple collaborators that I kept working with on Zoom. How about Zoom getting invented like a week after the pandemic?
Yeah, I know.
Like,
we all regret not buying shares, I'll tell you that much.
I guess so, because it really happened quite, you know, the pandemic happened on the 12th, and then a week later there was something called Zoom. But it was great that it was invented because we were able to create, and I have a new musical coming up called, actually, New York, New York, which is based on the movie with Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli. But it's all Kander Neb music, and it's brand new, and we'll go back into rehearsal for that. So,
wonderful.
But it was created during the pandemic, just on Zoom, and now since we've come out of the pandemic, I've had real meetings with everybody, and even a workshop with everybody. So now we're in person, and we're going forward.
And might we have it over here?
Yes, of course.
Excellent.
Yes, of course. And it's about a musician who falls in love with a singer. And you know, comedy ensues and great music ensues.
Brilliant. That's all we need, I think. Yeah. But ladies and gentlemen, the Queen, Sue Stroman.